But for now, we will have the Fungal Forum with, shit, let me find it in my notes here. I'm fucking up. The Fungal Forum with Dr. Jassy Draculic and Marcos Mascaria. Thank you.
So, hello everyone.
Hi.
Thank you very much for coming, and hope you are as interested into this topic, which is quite interesting, I believe. We're gonna discuss a couple of topics, and you will have some time to ask questions. And well, let's see how is this going. So first of all, we're gonna talk about the fact of spore reproduction. I've got a very interesting case about a species of mushroom called Masospora, which its way of reproduction is infecting an alive cicada while this stay in its larval form, and along the course of its life it starts to rot the half of the body of the still alive animal, converting it into spores. And once the animal is in its last stage of evolution or metamorphosis, the mushroom starts to liberate something close to amphetamines and psilocybin into the insect, making its behavior hypersexual and hyperactive in the way that while it's still rotting and decomposing, it spreads the original animal, making it a very successful way of reproduction, of course.
It's like a zombie party insect spreading fungal spores wherever
like
it
that.
leaves in its wake.
Yes.
It's pretty fucking fantastic.
I believe so.
Yeah, spores are pretty cool. So, you know your mushrooms, the ones you buy in the supermarket and elsewhere, see them lying around the place. That is just a small part of the whole fungus. The cup. The cock. It's more than just a cock. It's all of it. It's the whole sexual reproductive material of that fungus. It produces what we call the fruiting body, the mushrooms, which come out of the ground and distribute those spores. And spores come in many shapes and sizes, and they are pretty fascinating things. I think, yeah, fungi that infect insects are probably, even though I don't actually devote my life to them, it's disappointing to say, the most fascinating group of fungi. The second most fascinating is where I devote myself, which is the fungi that infect plants. Nevertheless, the different forms that fungi can take in order to produce spores and distribute them are pretty interesting. And you see the diversity of mushrooms you get out there, that's just the macroscopic features. When you take a microscope to that, you get an extra level of beauty and complexity. Fungi also have the ability to generate great pressure when they want to actually distribute their spores. So you can have, like, I think fungi might be the fastest organism on Earth, based on the speed in which they eject their spores. But yeah, so spores are the spunk. They're, spraying that seed all over the place, carrying out sexual reproduction. So it's not just purely clonal. You're introducing variation into your gene pool, and you're enabling your organism to adapt and survive and just carry on being a badass dominating the globe.
Is there any question you've got about spores and mushrooms you want to ask?
What's your favorite mushroom?
It's impossible to choose.
What's the mushroom you've got in your hand? This is quite a nice mushroom.
I've got here a specimen of Auricularia judai found around here. It's pretty...
This is a jelly-like fungus, and it doesn't look like your ordinary mushroom. Do you want to hold it?
Yeah, but
It's
I wouldn't recommend it.
My favorite mushroom, not that you asked me, but I'm going to answer you anyway, would probably be stinkhorns because they look like dicks. It is that simple. They smell really bad, and flies land on the goo, which is their spores, right at the tip of the phallus. They're called phallus impudica, and then the flies carry those spores elsewhere. Another way in which spores are pretty fucking cool.
Smells beautiful, by the way.
It does make you gag a little bit, yeah.
Please. Is that your question?
What's the most poisonous mushroom in the world, and how does it kill you?
Fuck.
What's the most poisonous? There's a lot of poisonous mushrooms. And they've often got very cool names. And also, the most poisonous mushrooms can often look very similar to really benign mushrooms. So your St. George's mushroom, your field mushroom, they look, the yellow stainer, they look very similar to things like deadly gallerina and like, the destroying angel. And,
we can go for the Amanita phalloides.
Yeah?
Talking about phalluses.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very true, very true.
Is that one can kill you in about 24 hours with just a little bite?
I think often it's due to, so this is what we're going to go on to on our next point, and I think actually I'll cut that, and we're going to go into point number 2, if you'll allow me to take the segue, which is about the adaptability and resilience of fungi. So fungi have an incredibly diverse metabolism. We all have a primary metabolism. That's what generates your fats, your proteins, your carbohydrates, and makes you run as an organism. But you also have a secondary metabolism, where any leftovers you change into whatever you want. They could be smell chemicals, they can be like photoprotectors, so like sunscreen kind of stuff, like fungi have these things, all sorts of stuff, including things that we now use for antibiotics, things that we use to help lower blood pressure. Like fungi make all this incredibly diverse amount of chemistry. But yeah, in terms of this enables them to therefore become incredibly adaptable and resilient, because they can make cool shit. So what makes them deadly is often things that just help. It's not they're adapted to kill other stuff, but the other stuff they're making is going to give you liver failure, is going to just be incredibly toxic for your mammalian ingestion. But I can't give you the precise chemistry and biochemistry. That's all I got.
Do you believe there is an inner purpose in the mushrooms to be that toxic to certain species?
Well, so you've got different categories of fungus, right?
Yeah.
You've got your biotroph, where it requires the host to be alive at all times. You've got your necrotroph, which kills it and then degrades it and eats on the dead flesh. And then being toxic is going to be beneficial to its lifestyle. If for a biotroph, anything that is accidentally toxic to other things, I think it's just completely coincidental. Like nature is full of these sort of happy coincidences because we are all fundamentally made from the same building blocks, even if our last common ancestor was about 1 billion years ago between us and fungi.
What's the difference between the mushroom and the toadstool?
I'd say which fairy stories you're reading. There's no scientific difference. The fruiting body is the mushroom, is the toadstool. I think people used to say that toadstools were the poisonous ones and mushrooms were the ones you can eat.
But that's purely fake news.
Correct.
So you subscribe to the taxonomic idea that we're in the same kind of super kingdom, phylum, whatever as mushrooms?
The fungi are an independent kingdom of their own. And yeah, our latest common ancestor is more than 1 billion years ago, so they are very distinct in their lineage to animals and to plants.
Wow, that's some real woke shit.
I only got like a quarter of the way into Daniel Dennett's like consciousness explained,
we can fall into the concept of mycelium and...
There is a dude, right? I think his name is Merlin Sheldrake, right? And he is well into mycorrhizae. So fungi associate with the roots of plants and they form like an underground network and they are very useful for the general functioning of whole ecosystems. He is of the mind that this is like a greater kind of mentality and that when you tread on the ground, I think Paul Stamets also probably subscribes to the same kind of view. I mean, from my perspective, consciousness is... It requires your ability to see yourself. Like, I think they're definitely interconnected, but I don't think I would call them conscious. But as I say, I only got a quarter of the way into consciousness explained, so I'm sorry.
How much can Candida expand on your body?
So yeasts are incredibly... So coming back to being adaptable, yeasts probably trump all others in that, like, we depend on yeast for so many things in our actual beneficial lives, and also they fuck us over a lot. I'd say anywhere where it's moist enough, Candida on your body can unfortunately live. I mean, this is just me hypothesizing, speculating in a reasonably educated way, but if you've got enough moisture and you've got enough sugars, like, yeasts are going to thrive there, and that is, is a challenge for human hygiene.
All right. Any other questions? Yeah, there's infinite questions, right? Last question. We gotta.
The last question is, how do we prefer to consume mushrooms? I quite like eating them raw when you're chopping them up before you cook
Depends
it.
on the species.
It does depend on depend on the species. Yeah. Okay, right.
But fried with garlic is
Always a winner.
easy to go one. Yeah, why not? All right, so to end this symposium, we're gonna make some sort of funny game. Like we're gonna start dropping some common names, and you're gonna guess if it's a real mushroom or we are making it up. So first of all, the devil's fingers.
I think overwhelming for real.
Yeah, it's fucking real.
Big up, big up. Okay. Sheep's head fungus. I think I'm getting mostly fake. It's real.
The bleeding tooth. It's real.
Okay, wait, for the last one, I've got a choice of 3. Hang on, I wrote these down. All right, there's 3 fungi here. So you can't just shout. I think you gotta shout for which one you think is... Yeah, 2 are real, 1's fake. All right. You got bird's nest fungi. You got scab fungi. And you got earth tongue fungi. Think about it. Earth tongue fungi, bird's nest fungi, scab fungi. Bird's nest fungi, scab fungi, earth tongue fungi. I'm not getting a consensus. You've got to shout a little bit louder. You're right. Scab is not a real fungus. Crust fungi, they're a real crust.
So, thank you very much for staying and being so...
Also, shout out to Fungals on Mushrooms, 11:30 tomorrow morning. Where's Ellie? Where's Misogyphist? There. The second fungal on mushrooms that you need to acquaint yourself with. Thank you, you've been a lovely audience. If you see me around, feel free to fire questions.
All right. Whoop, whoop. I will say, very well behaved audience during that talk. Very well behaved. So much so, in fact, I have a little treat for you guys, since you were so well behaved. And that's right, it's another scientific talk. So, yes, exactly.